And it really does bring up a question. Is consensus something that's good? Is it something that we really want? Or is it okay? And in fact, is it actually better if we come to some of these questions that we're all wrestling with and allow ourselves the freedom to disagree and grow from that? That's very interesting. Dave is going to be talking about that, and I guess I got to fill a little more time. Okay. So I don't want to steal any of his thunder because I know he's going to be talking about the idea of consensus. We've been talking about consensus versus convergence too, and he'll be talking about that, so I don't want to take any more of your time. Let David Hilster take over. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to make the claim today that consensus in science is wrong. I'm going to be a little bit off my paper today because it's a short paper, I'm sure many of you read it pretty quickly. But I've been thinking a lot about this because I'm the one, no matter what happens, no matter what we do in this room, they come to the website of the MPA or the World Science Database, and that's where they start. And I think, what is this person going to experience? How are they going to find what we're doing? Is this not working? Maybe you can do that because it's.
Need a battery? Do you want me to change it?
Yeah, you have to, I guess. This isn't. Okay, is this the first one? Yeah. All right. The mainstream holds the MPA hostage. I know this because I hear this all the time. We hear this all the time. The mainstream says we are all in agreement. The MPA has no agreement. The MPA are a bunch of mavericks, each with their own theory. Science is founded on consensus, repeatable experiments. Consensus is the minimal requirement of any scientific community to be relevant. The MPA is irrelevant because it can't agree on anything and because there is no consensus. This is what happens to the mainstream, what the mainstream says to us. They'll say, oh, the MPA, that's right. What's your theory of gravity? I get that from people when I talk about my film, to the average person. They say, if Einstein's wrong, who's right? And if you think about that, that's a normal statement. But it also implies a whole philosophy behind what they're asking there. We try to find, the MPA is selling itself wrong. We try to find a consensus. Go to our website. What I try to do is respect what the MPA has put before. I don't just tear down the website from before, put something up there. One of the things written was we try to find consensus. And we have what is in vogue now is convergence. Is this right? Is this okay, all right. It is in vogue. We are missing the point. We're setting ourselves up for failure in the mainstream's eyes and therefore the public's eyes. What we say is we can never come to a consensus. We should never come to a consensus. That's what my premise is here. Let's look at other professions in the world. Computer languages, I always make the analogy, you can make a computer program that runs identical, absolutely identical, much like mechanical cars run almost identical. They do the same thing, but yet they're completely different. They use different computer languages, human languages. There are better ones and worse ones. We live with those. We're not all speaking English yet. Technology, that's a very good area where the idea of different and trying different things is very important. Engineering, anybody in here think that engineers all agree on the same way they're going to be doing things? No, we end up having to make decisions, but agreement is not there. Marketing, politics, the arts, music, and science. You know, what does this all mean? Variety, I claim, is progress. More than one idea or task or product or language, artwork or engineering plan existing together creates progress. In fact, if you're next to people who agree with you, you're going to go nowhere. You're just going to reinforce your neuron paths in your brain about the things that you like. And yes, neurons in our brain, we know for a fact, I'm in artificial intelligence, we study these things, we know for a fact there's pleasure in going over the same thing. There is pleasure. It gives us a motivation, emotional motivation. Why not in theoretical physics and cosmology that variety is important? I mean, let's face it, if you have a theory here that you think describes everything, your major goal is not to say, oh, what other ideas are out there? And if you think about it, that's why we don't progress. If we are little islands of consensus, we're not going to move. Mainstream silent answers to this, what consensus really means. Think about it. Power, prestige, money. Dictatorships, I call that as consensus, wield a lot of power. If everybody in this room believes that one thing, and a guy comes in here and then says something different, he's going to feel the wrath of the group against him. Dictatorships garners a lot of prestige too. If your group, if you think your group has something right, the more people you have, that's what we humans do. We form groups to get together to try to find agreement, find people like ourselves. Okay, it may be a little different from somebody like Duncan Shaw, who loves to sit next to a person as a judge and debate. In fact, there are lots of people who like to debate. And I've seen this happen more and more in the NPA, where people don't get so emotional about, well, I don't agree with you, but they try to argue their points. And of course, dictatorships, consensus earn a lot of money. If you have every university in the world agreeing with something, you can build a collider that is, you built, as Ryden has said, one of the NPA members, a box of 20 squares. You put in all the particles that you predict that don't see, but you think should be there. You just keep filling in those boxes, and everybody says, yes, this box is empty. Every university around the world says that. They're going to build a Higgs collider and then try to find that particle. And of course, dictatorships, or in this case, consensus, can crush opposition. If we were to send a letter to the current president and say X, Y, and Z is wrong, he's going to go to his group and he's going to ask them, is this correct? And of course, they're going to look at it and say, oh, the MPA, they're full of all kinds of mavericks with their own theories. They can't agree on anything. How can that be? And it's really hard for us at times to move. This is not an easy move to say to ourselves, consensus isn't good. The mainstream silent killers is agreement causes stagnation. Bill Lucas was up here talking about how we've just gone nowhere. We can get ourselves into corners. But agreement itself will cause stagnation. It will not allow us to do as one physicist in my film says, well, Mrs. D. Hilster, if what you are saying is true, then everything needs to be done over again. That's not easy. It causes stagnation, it causes frailty. That is, if you, just like inbreeding, if you continue to inbreed, you eventually have problems. It's the same thing. It causes frailty. Agreement eventually conflicts with new evidence. And so what happens today? You make sure that the new evidence is wrong. They've unplugged the wire, they've done this, but you are going to make sure you defend the consensus. Agreement eventually becomes a religion and not a science, and that we all know. What the MPA does wrong, okay? And because again, I'm on the website. First of all, I'm here. I spend way too much of my time here because I believe in what we're doing. So don't get me wrong. Like anybody else, criticism is make us better. We have on our page from before a minimum consensus, which is to me 2 strikes. Minimal. That just doesn't sound very, very good. If you think about it, well, it's a minimum consensus. Again, I think the intention was right. I'm not saying intentions are wrong. I'm not criticizing who wrote that. We need to adjust. The MPA I've seen from 1996 to today, incredible gains. I'm saying right now, when we go to our website, which is the way people find out about us today, we need to change some things. We tell people we don't have a consensus, but it will come. That's not a good thing. I don't think a good thing to say. We are a bunch of salesmen of our own ideas without listening to our peers. And that's what people say. When you go there, we say there's a consensus, but what do we have? A bunch of papers and a bunch of people and a bunch of ideas, and you don't have anything there to say what's going on or how this even functions. You need to know my theory. Meanwhile, no one knows about your theory. And that's one of the things. We had 2 Finnish gentlemen in 2008, I think it was. I was out on the balcony in stores with them. I tried to keep people in the organization, tell them, yes, this isn't the way we envision the MPA being all the time. We're trying to make things better. And one of the guy from Finland turned to me and says, the MPA is a bunch of salesmen with no buyers. And that's okay. What the problem is we have to somehow in the MPA go from the reality that people should and have the absolute right, and I say necessity to do these, but we have to sell what science should be differently. Consensus is wrong. We're selling the wrong model. And when we do say consensus will get there, the mainstream is going to pound on us. And then even when we get to a consensus, they're still going to try to crush us just with all the other things we all know about. What can we do to make the MPA better? We can state there can be more than one viable theory, and they can live, work, and thrive side by side. I mean, how many things in engineering where you look at engineering and you say, I can do this in this way. If I look at it in this way, it's going to be beneficial. But if I look at it in this way, it'll be beneficial in a different way. We need to say that. What we need to do is turn this on its head. We have to stop saying consensus is what we're trying to look at. And therefore, we also box ourselves into the problem of, if consensus is important, how can we as an organization relish in all the different ideas? We have a logical problem there. Different theories have different strengths. Use X theory here, use X, Y here. Variety forces competition and the survival of the fittest. This is where people here inside call this convergence. That is, if an idea is good, and if you've heard it long enough, and other people are using it, you start to think, wow, maybe there is some merit to it. You think about yourself, and as we say, convergence happens. Those theoreticians who adapt, change, throw out, start over, combine, will win. I say this all the time. I see people with amazing ideas, and then they try something outside a little bit what they do, and so they're for this. I'll give you a simple example. Special relativity is wrong, but its child, Prince Charles, exists, but his mother doesn't. So you say special relativity is wrong, but its child, which is the only reason it exists, is right. And the idea here is that you try to hold on to your stuff, to your theories, your ideas. And meanwhile, the guy next to you is reading everything you're doing, modifying it, and making it better. So if we don't have these types of attitudes, and we don't let people know that we do, we're going to be in trouble. So you can see what that's about. What we can show the public. Variety is the best in theoretical physics and cosmology. That's really hard. Let's face it, if you're sitting here today with an idea or a theory or a unified theory, you don't believe what I just wrote. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves, okay? I mean, when we are convinced of something, we think we're right, and we want to try to change. I do. You say neutrino, Dave goes off. Well, the reason is because I like your theory. I like what Walt Thornhill, his stuff. I don't want to see him say something that I know and have studied a lot that's not true, but doesn't change anything. It's just the wording, perhaps. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we should all look and say, okay, there is a variety, and that is good for theoretical physics. So we instead of trying to play the consensus game, which will never win, we'll turn it on its head and say, we're going to be like everything else in arts. And the arts, can you imagine everybody paints the same? I mean, but for some reason in this room, we got to think of it. The universe is too complicated for anyone here to say that we can all write an equation down and everybody will agree with it. We have to have an engineering attitude and say, these things are feeble attempts, and our feebleness, we're going to try to work together and get better. Consensus is not only wrong, but detrimental and dangerous, and keeps us from true scientific progress. Show the public surveys of current work. What can we do? We can show the public surveys of current work and say, look, we're all together. We have different models for the same thing, but we're working together. How many structure people have incredible stuff that blows your mind? But Don Bradell's knots don't look the same as Greg Folk's shape sitting there. There's a lot of similarities, but they're not the same. But they get together and there's a commonality there. We have to start doing that, and I'll show you some. This is tough to change. We are so used to this mantra that consensus is important. Robert D. Hilster started this. No, this is a joke slide. Dave talked about his father too much, blah, blah, blah. No, and Greg didn't add that to it. I had to put that in there. But truly, I'm not saying this is an example of what's happening with my father's group. Over the last 3 years, Robert D. Hilster has held gravity group meetings regularly. For a long time, we didn't even know what it was for, what it was worth, or if anything would come out of it. How many people here have gone through that? It's tough. We would get up on the mornings and people, the gravity group meeting. We'd have, what, 10 people maybe? 7 people? Yeah. And we're thinking to ourselves, why are we doing this? But something kept us going. We said, there's something, it's got to be something there. Persistence has paid off. Currently, he is surveying all the theories in the MPA who deal with gravity. Okay? He has collected over a dozen of 2-page, it's going to be about 20 now, right? It keeps growing. And descriptions of different scientists' theory of gravity. And we'll eventually put this on the website. I have been doing it. I think to myself, I love science, and I stumble upon the World MPA website, or the World Science. What's there? The first thing when I criticized Margaret Wortham, who wrote the book Physics on the Fringe, her main thesis was, we're all together here because we love science so much, but we're not smart enough to understand mainstream science because it's too hard, that we've come together and said, we're going to make easier things to models of the world so we can continue to love science. Boy, did I get on that case right away. I went to the Amazon and it was the first to review her book. And I said, your premise, I'll give you 3 stars. You were in the MPA, talked with John Chappell, been with us for 15 years, but I disagree with your premise. I said, in fact, that's when I thought there was something missing, but I wasn't sure. Months later, I went back to that and found that there were 4 comments on this. Okay, here's my review. I believe the author has come up with this thesis to try to explain why this movement is growing. The author doesn't seem to examine the obvious answer for that growth. There are big fundamental problems in physics and cosmology, etc., etc., etc. The fringe sciences are not coming from a need for the simpler. They are coming from the growing recognition that there are fundamental flaws in today's theory. Most people don't study theoretical physics or cosmology. Most fringe sciences do, and do more of them, do more and more of them, find it full of holes. What I found out months later, here's what they said. This is the general public who's interested in science. And it was sort of showed me what we're not selling ourselves. We don't know how to get to. It says it would be interesting if you would give some example of what kinds of problems of conventional physics that you have in mind, and perhaps other books that you develop. I realized there was no place where we even told the public what was wrong with physics. We just go into our tirade about our model and how it's better, and they're going, but I thought everything was okay. So I spent time, and I put up those things. Here's another reply, the third reply. I think the reviewer definitely needs to enumerate at least a few of the big fundamental problems with physics and cosmology in his review. His review is not credible without. What this guy is saying is he'll go to the website that we have incredible work there, and we'll throw it away immediately because he doesn't even know what's wrong in the first place. So I went and I put up on that. I started to write this. This is my response, which then led to the problems in mainstream physics, which is right at the top of the page. And I said, here are some of the big problems. The Big Bang is a frontier problem. A lot of this didn't even make it into it, what I have there. But I did go finally to that, and I said, I'm going to get permission from, and I said, no, I'm going to put this up there. Because by the time I try to discuss this and everything, it'll be too late. And I'm one of the few people really that worry about this. I said, I'm going to throw it out there. And for months, no one said anything. And I thought, my gosh, something's going to happen. And finally, a couple of people did read it. And they said, well, you know, I don't agree with this. And I said, look, it's a survey. I put right at the top, at the very top, an answer to Margaret. I said, the reason the MPA exists is because independent scientists from around the world, 20% of them have PhDs, it's in there, in our database, almost 20%, it's 18.7%. I know because I took everyone and I have a database, so I can do statistics very accurately. Is that all these people come together and have independently come up with the same problems over and over. And that's why we exist, because we actually understand the mainstream better than the mainstream itself. And so I go there. So go to that, and of course send me the emails about how everything I put in there is wrong, that's fine. But again, what it is, it's a survey. You're not going to agree with everything in. But I really made it a point to try to figure out what an average person would be interested in knowing, that what we know, the Big Bang, the universe is more electrical than we think, and that another accusation is we don't have trained people. When 20% of the people on our database have PhDs, that's quite amazing. So we don't even tell the public. We have over 5. Oh, by the way, statistically, can you guess which page is the most popular page on our website now? It's the problems of mainstream physics. We have over 5,000 papers, but we have nothing on our website to tell the layman what is wrong with physics and cosmology. We do now. No one lists there anything. No one on the internet lists that anywhere, but we do now. So the MPA, in my opinion, is the first to really do that. I mean, who else would, right? I'm sure there's other groups that have similar things. It's a survey. It's not a consensus. You can disagree with what's there. Someone had to do it. I did it, and like I said, it's on the most popular page. Okay, marching orders, what we have to do. I really admire, this is in line with, I think, what Bill Lucas is trying to do. Let's get some marching orders for what our group is. List the main problems in science so we can justify what's there. The average person walking around doesn't know Einstein's wrong. They hear every day relativity uses GPS, and if Ripley's Believe It or Not, which I can't find anymore because I think they've removed it, a friend of mine from Albuquerque, when I was working in the medical profession of computer science, sent it to me and said, believe it or not, your car would be miles off if we didn't use relativity. So, those things are out. Create surveys of major areas of work. Gravity, we've started, we can use it as a model. Relativity, structure, subatomic structure, cosmology, Big Bang alternatives, expansion technology, etc. This way, if we have these, I'm making a thing called a theory object in our database, which will pretty much, you can go and list all the things under gravity. We have that a little bit. I don't think I put it here. But if you go to worldsci.org, not World MPA, but worldsci.org, click on topics. There you will have, as much as we have been able to classify everybody into a topic area. So this will allow a person first to be convinced there is a problem. Oh, that's really interesting. I never thought of it. And then go to a place to see who's doing what Bill Lucas is doing, what Greg Volk is doing, what Walt Thornhill is doing. And then they can get a survey instead of being left to their own devices to find things. Believe me, on the internet, they claim you have about 16 seconds to get somebody's attention. And today, anybody here think the internet is used and is useful? Well, it is. So again, as a communication officer, that's what I'm interested in. We need to admit consensus is wrong. We got to turn the tables. If we don't, we'll be stuck forever. Mainstream will win until we all are dead and gone. We need to admit that convergence is not interesting or understood to the public. I'm sorry, Greg. What I'm saying is it's true that it's important to us to know that. The public, if you ask that person, you tell them that, they'll look like you just read one of Bill Lucas's equation to them. which is a very amazing equation, but they're not going to understand it if they don't have the background. So what I'm saying is it's interesting to us, but we need to start thinking, don't think it that way. We internally know what's interesting. We're doing it, but what do we sell? We need to give real examples, real experiments. I think we should take Francisco Muller's experiment that shows so simply special relativity wrong, bless it as a group, put it up there and say, here it is, everything you need to reproduce it. We don't have anything like that. I'm sure there's many things we can do. We need to change theoretical science where variety is not only accepted but required. It's hard for us because each one of us has our bent. We don't want to do that. It's not natural to us. And only then will we have real progress in science and the MPA will make a mark on the world. We've got to do the same thing. We have to change science. In 3,000 years, this is the way I say it, the MPA person's different because they don't listen to who says it. They listen to what is being said. And then they think on their own. It sort of reminds me of MASH where the radar was given money by his boss, the sergeant, whoever's in charge. And he says, I'm your boss. I gave you the money in a poker game. He says, you know, you can trust me. He goes, I know, sir. But he said, you're still counting it. He goes, I know, sir. Why? Because no matter if you tell me, I'm going to go check it out myself. So those are the kinds of things we need to tell the world. This is the way science should be. So that's basically my talk on consensus. Thank you.